The Australian Financial Review.
Hello and welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss Summer Series Edition. Thank you so much for tuning in over the past year. We have so much enjoyed bringing this content to you. If you're an avid listener, you may suspect we spend a lot more than just 15 minutes with our bosses, and you'd be right. So, over the next 3 weeks, we'll not only be replaying some of our favourite episodes, but we'll be playing the extended versions of those interviews. With our usual 15-minute limit, there's a lot of great content that ends up on the cutting room floor. So we're really pleased to have the opportunity to share the whole kit and caboodle with you. Today, we're rebroadcasting our conversation with Sydney Swans Chief Executive Tom Harley. In this episode, not only does Tom talk about a significant failure in his career, losing the 2008 AFL Grand Final, but he also reflects on what his father taught him and how important being a role model for his own children is to him. It was a really wonderful chat and we hope you enjoy it. And please do let us know if you like these extended conversations on Apple or Spotify, and we'll be sure to do them again in the future. Thank you and happy listening.
I fail all the time. I'm my own harshest critic, so there aren't too many days where I close the day out and think, I didn't fail at anything. If you're looking for the silver bullet, you might get it and you might get an unbelievable sugar hit, but it's not sustainable. You've just got to grind. It's about doing and having unwavering confidence you're on the right path.
Hi, I'm Sally Patton, editor of Boss from the Australian Financial Review. And welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success and failure and everything in between. And along the way, we're aiming to get some great advice from our leaders. My guest today is Tom Harley, Chief Executive of the Sydney Swans. Hi, Tom, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Sally. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for allowing us into your new studio.
It's a beautiful space. This is my debut in this studio on a podcast. I've obviously taken a lot of people through it, but rapt to be hosting you today.
Fantastic. Now, Tom, as I said, you're the CEO of the Sydney Swans, which is one of 18 AFL clubs. I should also point out that you are yourself a former player, indeed a former captain of Geelong, which you led to 3 successive grand finals and 2 premierships and making my mother extremely happy. So thank you for that.
That feels like a lifetime ago now, my playing career, but I've been unbelievably fortunate to have been involved in something that I love, which is the game of AFL. From a junior player to a professional player to a broadcaster and now an administrator. So I've lived a very blessed AFL life.
And thank you for letting us spend 15 minutes with you. Let's start the clock. My first question is, what happens in the morning? What time do you get up? How do you start your day?
Now, we have had a conversation before, Sally, and I was proudly spruiking the fact that I was up at 4:30 and I was exercising at 5 and done by 6. Unfortunately, the gym closed. Now, that's my excuse. So I'm not as rigid as that, but I still do get up. I get up early, do exercise in the morning, sometimes passive, sometimes more assertive. Typically have a coffee with a couple of my very good mates in Balmain and bring one home for my wife, Felicity. Make the kids lunch and on occasions, a couple of times a week, take the kids to school. If not, head straight on to work. So it's an up early, a little bit of exercise, coffee, kids' lunch, out the door.
And what does assertive exercise look like and what does passive exercise look like?
The passive exercise is starting to creep into my routine as I get a bit older. So passive is a walk and a stretch and those sorts of things, and more assertive or aggressive is a cardio blowout. And one of the things, I guess, coming through an elite athlete path is you do become accustomed to working out aggressively. I see a half-hour window as not time to flaff around, it's time to go pretty hard, and that might be a really aggressive bike, treadmill, rower, cardio type workout.
I know the feeling, I must say. When I get a half-hour window, I think, good time for the couch.
I've been thinking that a lot lately as well, Sally, so don't feel too bad about that.
Welcome to the club. So, Tom, tell me about a pivotal moment in your career that shaped you as a leader or indeed changed the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, look, I think for me, there was one really clear moment, and it was back when I was an AFL footballer and I was charged with the responsibility of captaining the club. I was appointed by the CEO at the time, Brian Cook, who's now CEO of Carlton, prior to that point in time, I'd been I guess what you'd call a role model team player, but then entrusted with leadership. And we had some great success in my last couple of years whilst playing for Geelong. And as a result of that, I'm sure opportunities presented to me, which I guess set me on a path post-playing. So I think if I could pinpoint one specific example, it was the phone call that I received to honour me with the captaincy of Geelong.
And what did you think when that phone call came? Did you think, yes, I can do it? Did you think, oh, I'm not sure that I can do it?
Yeah, look, I'd never actually definitively led anything before. I've never been one that is motivated by definitive leadership or titular leadership where, it's a title or it's all the perks that come with that. So from that point of view, I was comfortable. I was comfortable with who I was, and I guess I was comfortable with the process that it was in effect endorsed by my peers, which I think carries significant weight. And then I was really comfortable also putting my hand up saying I don't know what I don't know. And one of the things I learned really early on in the piece was the power of a group, particularly when it comes to decision making and standard setting and the like. And I think one of the things that I've become more comfortable saying that I am comfortable at is acknowledging where my gaps are and who can help me plug those gaps for the greater good, not for me, but for the greater good. So I guess they were the early learnings from that pivotal moment in my career.
Interesting. So it sounds like you eased into leadership quite naturally.
I certainly didn't strive for it. I still would like to think I'm relatively young in my professional career, and from the journey that I've travelled from player to administrator, that's a path that some current players want to travel as well. So I've got the great privilege of having conversations now with a number of players who would like to go down a similar path to me. And one of the things that I often say to them is, look, just be really clear as to why you want to do that. Why do you want to be the CEO of a club? Or, if you want to go down a coaching path, why do you want to be the senior coach of the club? And make sure that you're confident and comfortable with those motivations and that they're pure. And what resonates with me is very much subservient leadership, and absolutely motivated by working for and with others. And that's certainly the conversation that I would have with current players now, just to try to get some clarity around that.
Yeah, it's good advice. Understand what your own motivation is.
Yeah, I think so. Because when you end up in these sorts of positions, and, I've genuinely mean this, I don't want this to sound glib, but I feel unbelievably fortunate and privileged to be in the position that I'm in. We're a football club that means a lot to a lot of people. We've got 2 million fans around the world, and the way our teams, both men and women, perform on the weekend can have a pretty profound impact on the lives of our fans on the Sunday and the Monday and how they start their week. So that's not lost on me, and therefore I am really clear as to what motivates me, or what should motivate me to do my job.
Okay, my next question is, what is the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
There is one that stands out more so than any other, and that's when you're charged with the responsibility of making a decision, a career decision. The advice given to me was any decision that's anchored to your family is a good one. It was given to me by Brian Cook, who was CEO of Geelong, and I had retired and I'd moved cities to Sydney, and I'd started a family in Sydney, and there were opportunities to do some other things. And ultimately, as a family, we decided that we were going to put down our foundations in Sydney as a family. And therefore, once that decision's made, the reality is that'll probably put some ceilings on some of the paths that you can go down.
I guess that makes it really easy for you in a sense that you know exactly what your priority is.
Yeah, that's right. There's a great book called The Road to Character. The author's a guy, David Brooks. He's an ex-army general in the States. And he speaks about, when it comes to decision-making, around prioritising your loves, right? And so you might have 10 and you list them out. It might be family, profession, art, music, socialising, whatever. Now, when you're faced with a decision, you just make sure that your priorities are in order, and therefore you can go to bed really comfortable knowing that you've made the right decision. And that's really, at the end of the day, all you need to be comfortable with.
I love that. Okay, Tom, stay right where you are. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to open this beautiful cardboard chatterbox.
I look forward to it.
Hello and welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Tom Harley, the Chief Executive of the Sydney Swans. Now, Tom, this is our section called the Chatterbox. In front of you, you will see a lovely cardboard box, which we borrowed from your reception downstairs.
It's resplendent, this box, Sally. It's magnificent, isn't it?
It's magnificent. Inside are 20 questions, all printed on little bits of paper and wrapped up. I'd now like to ask you to select 3 questions one by one. I'm going to read them to you and ask you to answer them.
So I'm going to give them to you.
You are.
Okay. I'm not looking.
No, exactly. Not allowed to look.
Do you want all 3 at the one time?
No, one by one.
One by one, okay.
Do you have a favourite productivity hack to help you get more out of your day?
One thing that I did recently was I deleted all social media apps bar LinkedIn off my phone. I cancelled all push notifications that weren't really, really important. And then as the weeks sort of unfold, you get the weekly screen time report, and I just found that my time on my device was down. And so for me, my productivity absolutely went through the roof, both at work, but also more importantly, just the mental space and the mental load that I guess consuming content through your device creates. So I took a hell of a lot of time back.
And did you get off social media because you wanted to save time, or were there other factors?
That was purely time. I was just doom scrolling, and I just didn't need to do that. And I thought, you know what, if I want to go and find something in this day and age, you can go and find it. I don't miss it at all. I do occasionally have to insert myself in a conversation and say, hey, what did our post look like? How did it come out from a work point of view? But as I say, if you really want to find something out, I think you can find it.
That's good advice, actually.
I can't even quantify the time, but that's time I can take back that might make me more present in a conversation at work, conversation at home, time away from the gym, could be anything like that. So ultimately, that's productivity.
Devices, are they banned from the bedroom or not?
Because I get up early, I do need an alarm to wake me up. And I got into this great habit 12 months ago with a smartwatch as my alarm, so it would vibrate on my wrist. And then for whatever reason, I just stopped wearing that device, and then I got back into the habit of having my phone there, and I now need to break that habit. So I would say devices out of the bedroom, absolutely, but I've got to start practicing what I preach with that.
But you still need an Apple Watch for your alarm.
That's true. So when I was wearing the Apple Watch as an alarm, it was, again, I'm not overly tech savvy. It was Wi-Fi off, airplane mode, blah, blah, all these sorts of things that it didn't ping. The only thing it did was wake me up silently with the buzz on my wrist. And that's something that I am contemplating getting back into.
Oh, I like that. So an Apple Watch without the stuff turned on is not a device.
Well, it's not really, and it sort of defeats the purpose of it, doesn't it? I got myself a smartwatch when it was a thing a couple of years ago. And within a week, it was just pinging and buzzing and everything was going on. And then a friend of mine said, well, just put it in airplane mode. So I did put it in airplane mode. And then I thought, well, it's just a watch and I prefer an analog watch. Yeah. And so I started wearing an analog watch. And I thought, well, that's a very expensive alarm clock if I'm only using it to vibrate on my wrist. So I'll land in the right landing spot with my wake-up routine that doesn't involve devices.
We might have to invite you back on the podcast in 6 months' time.
Yeah, that's right. See how I go. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do you want to have a fish around in the box? Okay. Who is the person outside of the business world you most admire and why?
Oh, that is a good question. Outside of the business world. Look, I'm going to say my dad.
Why is that?
Oh, look, I think as a parent now, my kids are 10, 8 and 5 and I know how much of an emphasis I put on my role as a role model, and then you can't help but reflect on the role that my parents played. And one of the things I have said about my old man before is that he's at retirement age and he tells me he's retired. I'm not necessarily sure he's totally off the tools, but he's still very much connected into his community, and a lot of his community, he lives in Adelaide. A lot of his community is connected to work. And I said to him, I have described him once as someone who very, very, very rarely, almost never says a bad word about anyone. Like he starts from a disposition is generally positive. So that's something that I've always admired in my old man. And often you might sit back and reflect and say, well, what would he do right now? And then I ask him, and I don't agree with what he says anyway, and he'll admit to that. But no, he's certainly one.
So is that something that you've tried to adopt? Don't say something nasty about other people. If you can't say it, if you can't say something nice, don't say it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is we all, this is probably getting a bit grandiose and a bit altruistic, but life's all about choices, and you've got choices to make, and you can choose to go down that particular path, and that might be vitriol or it might be unkind. But I generally try to look on the positive and glass half full side of the world.
It's good advice. Life's really too short.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I do believe this. I do believe you know, and this is not belittling some of the very complex matters involving mental health, but on the assumption that one's mental health is okay, you fundamentally are making choices, and you can choose how you front up to a room, to a meeting, how you greet people, what energy you put into said task. And I generally choose to front up to most things positively.
I like that. I'm going to try and adopt that, even when I'm tired.
I can tell you're smiling.
Okay, next question from the chatterbox. Did you take a sneak peek on the way through?
I didn't have a look.
So, Tom, how do you make tough decisions or manage conflict?
Oh, now that is a good one. I think the first thing in any team, and a team can be a sports team, an organisation, it can be a family, is the acknowledgement that conflict is inevitable. And I often talk to teams, my team, and say, who likes conflict here? I reckon in a room of about 30, you generally get one person put their hand up, and that's probably about right. My experience is about 1 in 30 people really like conflict. Most of us don't.
I run a mile.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's that, as do most people. But I think the reality is it's inevitable. Certainly if you want to be a high-performing team, you've got to acknowledge that it's inevitable. And the best way to address conflict, again, from a textbook point of view, and I'd love to say I put my hand up and say I do this every time, but there are times where I run a mile like everyone else does, is to have let's call it a set of behavioural framework, and this can present as values, trademark behaviours or whatever. It's almost like your MO as a team, and you have a conversation specific to performance that are within those boundaries. And you've got to spend a bit of time creating those boundaries. And so if I use a sports analogy and coming through my time at Geelong and my time at the Sydney Swans is, you know, we talk about trademark behaviours, that basically the non-negotiables to be a part of that team. And it's not a wordsmith exercise. It is literally what are the very descriptive behaviours to be a member of this team. And generally addressing conflict is when someone or a group of people have stepped beyond those behaviours. And then you have the conversation within the framework of those behaviours. So that would be my tip on managing conflict.
So what are those boundaries that you're talking about, the boundaries of behaviour?
Yeah, so that's I mean, it's one of the ways in determining what they are is get your group together, and you've got to spend some time to do this with a team and ask the team and say, in an ideal world, how would you want us to be perceived? 3 words: curious, disciplined, respectful. Right now, how do you think we are described? Mundane, a bit lazy, polite. And then you have a conversation about the gap between the two, and therefore what behaviours do you need to demonstrate as an individual to be a member of this team? And what behaviours won't be tolerated if you are to be a member of this team? And then you can knock that around. It's a bit of a process, but you knock that around and you leave being really clear on who you are and what you stand for, and what's accepted and what's not. And once you've got those clear boundaries lined, you can have a conversation when people step out of that. And the conversation is related just to performance. Take the personality out of it, you have the conversation about performance.
And what happens if people just don't agree on something and they've both got quite legitimate arguments, and the conflict is they just don't agree, and they might both be being curious and loyal and all those things?
Yeah, I think, there are lots of hacks around that, and I think the beauty of the high performing teams that I admire from afar and I aspire to be a part of has that diversity, and but one of the traits that I think the really great teams do have is cabinet solidarity, where you might disagree, and hopefully, you know what, you do disagree on certain things.
It can be positive, right?
That's absolutely can be positive, but if you can leave a decision, like as a really, really crude example, there might be a decision and you've got 7 people in the room, you're throwing it around, 4 might agree with it, 3 might disagree, but as soon as you walk out the door, it's 7-zip. Manage the conflict internally, but once you're out the door, we're all on the same page. And
is there a secret to managing that conflict?
Open and honest conversation. Yeah, open and honest conversation. And there are so many things that go into that, and I'm not sure whether we're on camera here, but I'm going to put my hand up and say I'm not an expert at any of this. But if you can create an environment where people who are involved in that conversation feel comfortable and safe to genuinely put forward their views without fear or favour, then I think you can have a really robust discussion that is honest, coming from a good place. But ultimately, conflict is about resolution, and sometimes as a member of a team, you're going to have to go against the tide and go with other people to be part of that team.
But that's the key, isn't it? It's got to come from the right place, and the team has got to understand that it is coming from the right place.
Yeah, and I think there's a real art. I really admire people who can facilitate those team conversations really well. They're the best leaders. They're the ones that I sort of look up to, and that have it's almost an innate ability to manage conversations with different personality types. Give everyone enough time to put forward their view, enough oxygen to get their point across, shape it around ultimately, and then you're looking upon reflection, say he or she got exactly where they wanted to get to at the end of that, but they've given everyone a voice along the way, and I think they're the most inspiring and inspirational leaders.
Great. I love that. Next question. Have a bit of a fish around. Tell me about a time where you failed at something. How did you recover and what did you learn?
I fail all the time.
I'm sure you don't.
I do. I'm my own harshest critic. So as far as, one singular fail that springs to mind, and maybe our AFL listeners might understand this, but in 2008, playing for Geelong, we lost the grand final when we were the overwhelming favourites, and your mother-in-law would have been pretty annoyed about that. But it's actually less about the failure. It's how you reflect on that to ultimately be better the next day. And one thing I think that failure does present is a more critical lens on learnings. When you're in flow and you're constantly winning, inverted commas, and getting results, you can let yourself slip on some of those standards I was talking about before. However, when you fail, it's just human nature to critique that a little bit further. So certainly from a playing point of view, losing games, and AFL football more broadly is a results-based industry, and it's very public, and we have to reflect all the time. And it's just as important to reflect when you win, but certainly when you lose, it provides a more critical landscape to address the things that you can do better.
So the lesson then is not to become complacent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love Simon Sinek as an author. He's got a myriad of great books. One of them's called The Infinite Game, which is just about literally being better today than you were yesterday. So live in the moment, but know that at the end of the day, you've made gains, and then the sum of those incremental gains leads to great things.
Yeah, it's that incremental part that I love.
Yeah, it is. And the incremental part, I think, Sally, requires patience. If you're looking for the silver bullet, you might get it, and you might get an unbelievable sugar hit, but it's not sustainable. You've just got to grind. It's about doing and having unwavering confidence that you're on the right path.
Yeah, okay. Patience. I will take that away with me. My last question is, if we gave you a month off, unencumbered, you could do anything you wanted, what would you do?
I would go skiing for a month. I would go the Northern Hemisphere somewhere, probably Canada. For me, I came across snow skiing late after I'd finished as an athlete, and it satisfied immediately that competitive edge that is just so deeply ingrained in me.
Who can get down the hill first?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolute speed over substance and style. It's that great combination of just being free and expressing yourself as an athlete. So it's this amazing sport for the skiers out there. And now that I go skiing with my family, that you can do it as a group, but the reality is when you're on the hill, you're really by yourself. And so you've got a sense of community, you've got a sense of adrenaline and sport and exercise, and then just the wide expanses as well. So, I wouldn't have to think for too long to suggest that as a month.
Do you head for the moguls or no moguls?
No moguls. I've got dodgy knees, so no, I prefer the nice groomed runs of Whistler Blackcomb.
Tom, that's our time up. Thank you so much for allowing us to spend time with you. I love the fact that you are beginning to slow down physically. As you get older, it makes me feel slightly better. I love your positivity. I love what you're trying to do with your devices and social media. And I love the way that you put family first and make that the centre of every decision. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing how you get on with your devices in the bedroom.
So do I. Thanks for having me, Sally.
Thank you for tuning into our summer series. We hope you enjoyed that extended chat with Tom Harley from the Sydney Swans. Be sure to check back in next week when we replay our extended chat with Google Managing Director Melanie Silver. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. You can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Lap Fan. Our theme is by Alex Gao, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.